Good afternoon. It's Monday, October the 18th. Rest in eternal peace, Colin Powell. And this is the black man who reads aloud. I'm continuing my personal journey through the Federal Writers Project, the Alabama Slave Narratives. Today we are going to be reading the Recollections of Josh Horn. The interview was taken by Ruby Pickens Tart in Livingstone, Alabama. Of course, the Federal Writers Project was a project that came out of the WPA, the Workers Progress Administration, or the Work Progress Administration, during the Franklin Delano administration's projects to eliminate or the depression that was going on in the nation in the 1930s. Josh Horn, chasing Guinea Jim, the runaway slave. 7 miles east from Livingstone on State Road number 80, thence left 2 miles via a dim road through the woods to a cultivated section. The beginning of a large plantation area stands the old-timey cabin of Josh Horn, a well-known and influential figure in the colored community. Vigorous and active despite his more than 80 years, Ancestor Horn exemplifies the gentleness with which time deals with those dwelling in a helpful spot and living the simple lives of a rural people. I found him nodding on his front steps. Josh, I said, I've come to get you to tell me some old wartime stories. And I want to ask you some questions about you and Alice and how you all are getting along. I just want to know all about you and your family as far back as you can remember. All right, Miss Ruby, I'm glad to tell you what I knows, said Josh, and it ain't going to be a lot of fibbing, just like everything was. I'm telling you like you asked me. Now, about us getting along, I was telling you the truth. If I took for God, I'd say, just like I'm saying now, if my children ever ate a mouthful that wasn't honest, they ate it somewhere else. 'Cause I ain't never stole a mouthful of something chained for em in all of my life. It's honest victuals, they say, and the varmints I killed in the woods, cussing us raised children fast, and us had a heap of them, 16, if I remembers right. And soon I found out that I could help feed them that way. I done a heap of hunting. And everybody knows I was a good hunter. Alice used to make me go every Friday night. Then us always had a possum or two for Sunday. Why, I asked, didn't you go Saturday night? Well, as I tell you, Josh said, Alice is a good Christian woman, and she knowed I'd hunt mighty near all night. And she didn't want nobody see me coming in Sunday morning with no guns and no dogs. So I went every Friday night, and I went in the week too, and that helped a lot to feed them children. I don't owe nobody not a nickel. I like to get in debt when the government come in and try to help us with that cotton doings. They cut it down so on me I couldn't make nothing. But I was getting on right now, and so is my children. Us is got 14 living, and they's all been to school, but ain't but one been to Booker Washington School, but they all can read and write. And some of them is teaching school out here in the country. The doctor, he come clear out here to see us, and I always pays him. He just here with Alice last night. It's a 9 mile, and two of them back there in the woods through Moss Johnny's place. But he come when us went after him about midnight, and that's a comfort to know he come. I asked what was the matter with Alice. Well, I tell you, Miss Ruby. She was back there with me in the kitchen, and I got through eating, and I come out and sat down in the swinger to get some air. The moon was shining, and Alice come out saying loud as she could, "Who is you? Who is you?" The children run to her and with a lamp, and I run, and 'twa'n't nobody there. Well, Alice said 'twas a big man standing right side her, dressed in black, and she called it death. Us couldn't do nothing with her, and she didn't know nobody, nor me, nor the children. So I went to Livingstone after Dr. McCann, and he come and he sat with her for about an hour. He said that 'twas the acute digestion or something like that. I knows I won't no spirit. I don't believe in nothing like that. Well, I said, I don't know, Josh. I've been hearing some ghost tales that freeze the blood in my veins. Yes, sir, said Josh. If you wants to hear ghost tales, I can show tell him, 'cause I seed this here with my own eyes. Tain't no made up nothing neither. Just something I seen just like I tells you. Green Hale and Ism Matthews belong to the New Hope Church, and the Reverend Bird Hall pastored there. They asked me down to hear him preach one night, and us three, me and Green and Ism, was riding along side by side. I was riding a mule, but it was a fast mule, and Green couldn't keep up, and Ism said, somebody been hunting. I looked up, and 'twas a sapling right there across the road. He said, fella ought to leave nothing like that. When the moon get low, it hit him in the face. The moon was straight up and down then, and I said, that's right, and I was telling you the truth. The sapling just raised up, turned around in the air, and the brush part tickled my mule and Ism's horse in the face. If you ever seen them buck and rear and jump up, they show dead. Then they took off down the road and didn't hold him, and we couldn't hold him back. And here comes Green, and we left him behind because his mule couldn't keep up. If you ever heard a man pray more earnester than old Green, I ain't. He come down the road yelling, Lord, us live together. Let us die together. He meant for us to wait for him, but I couldn't hold that mule, and I wasn't trying to hold him. I was getting away from there. When we come together, us was a mile from where us done been. Then us had to decide what to do. Ism said for us to go with him, and Green said no, us near to his house, but us weren't near to nobody, and I was so scared. I hadn't been for Alice. I just stayed right where I was till sunup, I said. No, every man better take care of his own self and us dead. When I got home, I didn't take nothing off that mule but myself. I just left him standing at the door with the saddle on. What scared Green so was a man, he said, what was riding right side him and didn't have no head. 'Twas a good thing he didn't tell me that then. I just naturally would drop dead. No, ma'am, I don't exactly believe in ghosties. But I heard Mr. Marshall Lee say he was riding on home one night, and a woman stepped out in the road and said, Marshall, let me ride. He said, my horse won't tote double. She says, yes, it will. And she jumped up behind him, and that horse bucked and jumped near about from under him. But when he got home, she wasn't there. He said his sister had just died, and it must have been her. Another time, one Friday morning, Alice said us better get a possum for Sunday. She said she didn't want none caught after midnight on Saturday. I went down where I know there was Simmons, and them dogs never treed nothing. They just run around that dang Simmons tree like they gone crazy. I'm telling you the truth. Something jumped out of that tree and had their heads backwards and forwards, and I looked like a flame shooting out its eyes. 'Twa'n't no possum I'd ever seen. 'Twa'n't like nothing. Them dogs, Liz and Roger and Cuba, made a bulge at me. Cotton was waist high, and I run down to the cotton row and crossed the road, and they trailed me. I said, "What ails you dogs?" And they just come in a barking, and they run me to the bridge over the Canabaya. So I climbed on the banisters, and I seen they had my trail, and they gonna catch me. So I turns around and tore out for the sludge. They lost my trail then, and when I got home about daylight, them thorns and briars and all done tore my clothes plumb off me. 'Twas 3 days before I ever seen them dogs again. And I can tell you something else. It's just like I said. I's always been a hunter, and one night I went down the post oak woods hunting by myself. This is a fact, ain't no lie. It's what I done. I had a mighty good dog, and I just kept walking and walking, and I got mighty near to Mr. Redhead Jim Lee's place, and I walked on and after I seen after a while I seen I'd lost my dog. I couldn't see him nowhere, and I couldn't hear him nowhere, and then something say to me just like this: "Josh, blow your horn." And just like that, like somebody talking to me. Well, I give 3 loud, long blows and sat there a while longer, but that dog didn't come. Of course, I knowed he'd come sometimes, and so I just sat there on that log, and I just turned a fool. I reckon, but 'twas just like somebody talking to me, like it appeared to me was whispering, "Josh, you out there in these woods by yourself. You blowed that horn and your enemy heard you. You's a fool, you is." And I whispered back, "That's a fact." I couldn't hear what it was whispering to me, but us just talked back to one another, and about that time I looked up, and here comes 3 men riding on new saddles with shiny buckles going squeacher, squeacher, just like that. I heard the horses feed just as natural as could be. I thought, sure, I seen them, and it appears to look clean out of reason, but them men come riding right up on me, and I jump over that log and lay flat on the other side, and I looked, and it looked like I could see right through that log and heard them say, "There he is, there he is." And I seen them pointing their finger right where I was. I know the horse is gonna step over the log on top of me, and I'm telling you the truth. I jump up behind that log and I run about 2 miles, and if it hadn't been for that sludge, I knowed where I'd went. I come to myself in the middle of that water up to hair, waist high. And there was my dog, old Cuba, done treed a possum. The first thing I remember is about slavery time. I want nothing but a boy. About 15, I reckon. That's where what Marse Johnny Horn say us belong to Marse Eichhorn, Marse Johnny Parr, right here on this place where us is now. But this here didn't belong to me then. This here was all Marse Ike's place. Marse Ike's gin got out of fixing and couldn't get fixed. Colonel Lee had 2 gins, and one of them was just below old Turner House. Recollect, a big old hickory tree. That's what it was. I was plenty big enough to drive the mules to the gin, set on the lever, and drive them just like a lasses mill. And so that night, Marse Ike told us he want everybody to go with him to Colonel Lee's next morning, and didn't want nobody to get out and go ahead of him. That held up the ginning, made us not to go to the gin house till sunup. Us got the mules and just waited. 'Twixt daylight and sunup, and us standing there at the gate, and we had a little fine horn up the road. Us didn't know what it meant coming to the house, and by and by and been by Mr. Beasley, what lived not far from Moss Hike. He rode up and had 5 dogs, 5 nigger dogs, what they call them, and soon as he come, Moss Ike's horse was saddled up, and Moss Ike and him rode off down the road with them and the dogs with him, ahead of us. Us followed along behind, stay close as they allow us to see what they was up to. When they got close to the gin house right side of the road, they stopped us, and Mr. Beasley told Old Brown to go ahead. Old Brown was the lead dog and had a bell on him and that was fastened together with a rod just like a steer's. He turned them loose, and then he popped that whip and hollered at Old Brown and told him, "Nigger!" Old Brown hollered like he hit. He wanted to go, and there was a fence on both sides that made it a lane, so he put Old Brown over the fence on the gin house side and told Brown to go ahead, and he went ahead and run all around the gin house and then let him in the gin room and grabbed in the cottonseed in a hole. Then somebody hollered, "Guinea Jim?" I looks and I didn't see him. Didn't nobody see him, but they knows that's where he had been hiding. Mr. Beasley told Old Brown he just fooling him, and Old Brown holler again like he killing him. And Mr. Beasley said, "Go get that nigger." And Old Brown started away from dark like he had been hunting nothing, but he went around and around that gin, and Mr. Beasley told him he had better do better than, or he'd kill him, because he hadn't come there for nothing. Brown made a circle around that gin way down to the fence that time, and he was so fat he couldn't get through the fence. You know what sort of fence, a rail fence it was, that he stopped and barked for help. Now, and I see this with my own eyes. They put Brown on top of that fence, and he jumped way out in the road, didn't stay on the fence. He jumped and run up and down in the road and couldn't find no scent of Jim. You knows how they used to make them rail fences? Well, Brown come back there, and this is the truth, so help me God. He barked, looked like for them to lift him back on the fence, and God bless if that dog didn't walk the rail fence like he was walking a log, as far from here to that gate yonder, and tracked Jim just like he was on the ground. He fell off once, and they put him back on it. Put him back, and he run his track right on to where Jim jumped the fence way out in the road. Old Brown run right across that road to the other fence tree again on the other side of the road towards Combier. Old Brown walked the fence on that side of the road a good piece, just like he done on the other side. Them other dogs, he never ever turned them loose. When Brown he jumped that fence, he jumped just as far as he can on the field side, like he was going to catch Jim like a gnat or something, and he never stopped barking, and he never stopped barking no more, just like he jumping a rabbit. Then Mr. Beasley turned the other dogs loose. He had never turned loose, casing he saw Old Brown then got this thing straight, and he had it straight. Them dogs run that track right on down to Combier and crossed it over to the Blackshear side. There was an old big straw field that them and they crossed it and come through that field. All them dogs barking just like they looking at Jim. Reckless, they come up on Jim running with a pine brush tied behind him to drag his scent away, but it didn't bother Old Brown. When them dogs began to push him, Jim draped the brush and run towards Cumbia. Now on the Cumbia there used to be beavers worse than on the Sucanachi now. There was a big beaver dam twixt the bridge and the hell place, and Jim run to that beaver dam. You know where when beavers build the dams, they cut down trees and let them fall in the creek and pull in trash and brush, same as folks, to dam up their water till it's knee deep. Them dogs seen him and old Brown looking at him just before he jump in above the dam right amongst the trash and things they brought in there. Brown seed him and he jumped in right behind. Jim just dived under the reef and let his nose stick out of the water. Every once in a while, he put his head under, he holding to a pole down there. And once Mr. Beasley seen him, he just let him stay there. Brown would swim about amongst the brush, backwards and forwards, and terribly. Mr. Beasley told old Brown, "Go get him." Then all them men got poles and dug and about in the raft hunting him. They knowed where he was, and Moss Ike had a pole tugging around trying to find him too. Then he told Mr. Beasley to give him a hatchet and let him fix the pole. He sharpened the pole right sharp, and then Moss Ike started to jug around with the pole and kinda laughed to himself 'cause he knowed he done found Jim. About that time, Jim poked his head up and say, "This here me," and everybody holler. Then he asked, "Please, for God's sakes, don't let them dogs get him." They told him to come on out. You see, Jim belonged to Miss Mary Lee, Mr. John Lee's ma, and his pa was killed in the war, so Mr. Beasley was looking out for her. But they took Jim out of there, and Mr. Beasley whipped him a little and told him, "Jim, you put up a pretty good fight, and I was going to give you a start for a run with the dogs." Jim took out towards Miss Mary, and Mr. Beasley held old Brown as long as he could. They caught Jim and bit him right smart. You see, they had to let him bite him a little to satisfy the dogs. Jim could have made it, except he was all hot and wore out. That's about all I knows, except us belong to Moss Ike Horn, and first us belonged to Mr. Price Williams, which what run the hotel in Livingstone. He took my grandma to Mobile, then he died. Us mom belonged to their two children, Miss Nellie Gully, Mr. Jake's wife, and Miss Bert Blankany. Moss Ike Horn was the uncle, and all us come round to him, and us been here ever since. My mammy was Ann Campbell, and my pappy was John Horn, and us ain't never had no trouble with nobody about nothing. We having a barbecue on the 4th of July, and us want you to come down to it. If Alice gets along well, and I's going to tell you about Rod and Big John and John Gavison when they run Wade, and about how old man Jim Devers, Alice's steppa, hid him in the cave under the house. What they had as nice hams as I ever ate. Course a little tainted, but sure was good. Them niggas was fat as beavers, just sitting there eating that meat. And about the time Moss Ike slip up on a heap of niggas at a frolic twixt Sumterville and Livingstone and put an end to the frolic. Them niggas having a big dance, and Moss Ike and the patrollers having a big run, said they wanted to have some fun, and they did. Said he eased up on them with a white sheet round him and a big brush in his head. And somehow or another, they didn't see him till he spoke. Then he holler, "By God, I'm a bird blinding, and I say these niggas tore down the dirt chimneys and run through the house." He said he ain't never heard such a fuss in a cornfield in his born days. What do he mean about bird blinding? When what you goes in the cane branch is so thick, it takes a light to shine the bird's eyes and blind them till you can catch them. That's what you call bird blinding. Yes, Moss Ike and that dude, he couldn't stand in for him to have no fun that he ain't in it. Come on back on the 4th of July, and I's going to tell you some show enough tales. You sort of caught me when my mind wasn't exactly on it. I ain't had no sleep, just sitting there side the bed by Alice, catching the nod now and then. I was too sleepy to sing no song, but but one I likes is this. It suits me now in my age. My late sons is sinking fast. My race is nearly run. My strong trials is now is past. My triumph just begun. You come on back and I'll sing the rest. I got to see about some things right now. And again, we are reading the recollections of Josh Horn, taken in Livingstone, Alabama. Have a great day and thank you.